In tonight's news, lorries carrying essential items enter Gaza at the start of a truce that will lead to the release of hostages. Pharmaceutical giant AstraZeneca is to launch a research and development center in the Lok Ma Chau Loop. And Cathay Pacific is optimistic of recording its first annual profit in 4 years.
More lorries carrying much-needed food, fuel and medicines began rolling into Gaza from Egypt at the start of a 4-day truce between Hamas and Israel. As the aid convoy moved in, the International Red Cross stood by to receive 13 hostages held by Hamas. In all, 50 will be freed over the next few days in exchange for 150 Palestinians jailed in Israel. The breakthrough is not expected to ease the agony of 2 million destitute Palestinians whose homes were demolished by Israeli airstrikes. Cooler weather and rain have worsened conditions as malnutrition, overcrowding, and a lack of sanitation threaten disease outbreaks. An Israeli airstrike on Khan units before the ceasefire led to more casualties. In nearly 7 weeks, more than 14,000 Palestinians have been killed, 40% of them children. Israel's offensive followed a deadly Hamas attack in which about 200 people were taken to Gaza as hostages.
A double-decker bus was among several vehicles set on fire as riots erupted in Dublin after 5 people were stabbed in the Irish capital. Shops were looted before order was restored. Police said the rioters were anti-immigrant, right-wing hooligans. The chaos followed a stabbing spree. A 5-year-old girl was seriously injured and underwent emergency surgery. A woman was also seriously hurt, while 2 other children suffered minor injuries.
AstraZeneca may have become a household name with its COVID vaccine, but the multinational pharmaceutical firm set foot in Hong Kong more than 3 decades ago. And now it is heeding the government's call to expand its operations here.
3、2、1，请揭牌。
At a ceremony in government headquarters, the firm announced that it is setting up a research and development center with the help of the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises. The facility, which will be built in the future Hong Kong Shenzhen Innovation and Technology Park at the Lok Ma Chau Loop, will specialize in cancer research, cell therapy, and genome editing. AstraZeneca will hire about 100 people within 5 years and collaborate with the city's 2 medical schools on clinical trials. The pharma giant has a strong presence in the mainland market, with 13% of its global revenue last year derived from China. But its China President Lian Wang declared that AstraZeneca is not in Hong Kong to boost sales, but rather to focus on research and development. Oncologist Tony Mok, who sits on the company's board, says the city remains attractive to foreign capital because of its open business environment. But he admitted authorities can still do more to help.
Apart from the so-called funding from the government, we do need actually a lot of so-called potential facilitation in the regulation. For example, the data and the sample, whether we can actually utilize, the one that come from China. So we do have the brain and ability here, but then our database is still small.
Financial Secretary Paul Chan, who visited AstraZeneca's headquarters during his European trip in September, said the hub will inject fresh impetus for medical research in the Greater Bay Area. Raymond Yang, Cable News.
The Development Bureau has barred Yatming Construction and Engineering from bidding for contracts temporarily. This came after a worker died from injuries sustained at a construction site on the peak yesterday. The 44-year-old man was knocked down by a reversing vehicle on Pollock's path and suffered serious injuries when his leg was pinned underneath a drilling rig. He was sent to Ratunji Hospital where he died.
With an overwhelming show of hands, the Legislative Council passed a motion of thanks for the policy address. The motion, tabled by Starry Lee, was put to a vote after 3 days of debate, as lawmakers took turns expressing their opinion on policies. In his closing remarks, Chief Secretary Eric Chan pledged to study each recommendation and follow up on them. The motion does not have actual legislative effect, but is regarded as a litmus test of government support. It was last rejected in 2017, when then Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying delivered his fifth and final report.
United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres was warmly wrapped up for his visit to the frozen continent of Antarctica. Accompanied by Chilean President Gabriel Boric, Guterres traveled to the southernmost part of the world to see the effects of global warming. The visit comes as the UN prepares for the next climate change conference, known as COP28, which will open in Dubai next week. Guterres took time off to look at penguins, but also delivered a serious message.
What happens in Antarctica doesn't stay in Antarctica. This is changing the way currents evolve around the world, in which warm water is distributed. This is having an impact on the floods, on the storms, on the other situations that are creating havoc around the world.
Hong Kong's flag carrier Cathay Pacific Airways expects to record its first annual profit since 2019 as the number of passengers soared after the pandemic. The airline believes that net profit for the second half of 2023 will exceed the $4.3 billion made in the first 6 months. With the damage caused to aviation by COVID receding into history, Cathay aims to recruit 5,000 more people next year. But its earnings could be affected by extra flights from the mainland to global destinations.
If the direct capacity continues to build up between mainland and rest of the world, definitely there will be an impact on our yield. But obviously, we are very closely watching all these movements in Chinese mainland, and we'll continue to adjust our own pricing and inventory policies accordingly.
In the past 2 months, Hong Kong was lashed by 2 typhoons, Saola and Koinu. Saola triggered the first number 10 signal in 5 years. During the passage of the storms, the Government Flying Service, or GFS, made use of the drop-zone system to collect meteorological data, which enabled the observatory to improve its typhoon track forecast. A fixed-wing aircraft would dispatch zones near the storm's eye at an altitude of between 31,000 and 35,000 feet, depending on the scale of a cyclone. This enabled the GFS to capture the eye wall of Sela in September and alert the public that it had turned into a mature storm. The department used to conduct reconnaissance missions only in daytime since the drop-zone system was adopted in 2016. But it undertook the test at night for the first time when Typhoon Koinu approached.
氣象數據嚟講咧，係較為安全、同埋更加有效嘅。
Pilot Elaine Chen pointed out that compared to sending an aircraft into a cyclone, dispatching sondes is a safer and more effective way to collect weather data. But she said there were still challenges such as turbulence and hailstones. There have been 57 drop zone missions, covering 38 tropical storms so far. The sonde and the parachute that it's attached to cannot be reused or recycled. But as they are made of biodegradable materials, they do not cause any pollution when landing in water. Janice Low, Cable News.